In this video I'll be making blade guides for my big bandsaw, and I've already made a mock-up of the upper blade guide here. The screws that hold on these guide blocks thread directly into the wood, and I wasn't sure if I would have enough hold, so I experimented with various species of wood, and I threaded it in there and then just kind of screwed the screw in there, tightening it until it would tear out, until this screw just twisted right off. And then I realized I'm probably overdoing it, and even ordinary maple will surely have enough hold. This little block will be what the guide blocks are screwed onto. I'm using calipers to lay out the hole pattern for the screws. I'm using the tip of a larger drill for the countersink because there's no room for a countersink bit in the slot. And now with the machine screw tap and the drill, I am tapping all the holes. The main body of it is going to be made out of Baltic birch plywood, and I've glued 2 layers of this together to form this block to cut that out of. I drilled 3 holes, then drilling between them with a brad point bit to make a slot. I just cut some guide blocks out of lignum vitae, which is a very hard wood. If you don't have any regular hardwood like maple should do. And these get clamped on using bolts and some metal plates like this. I cut these metal plates out of some 3mm thick bar stock like this, and I need 2 more for the bottom, so I'll make some more. These washers fit in the bearing exactly, and so if I put these on a 5/16 inch carriage bolt and the bigger one on the end, I can use that to contain the washer, and then another washer on here and a nut to clamp it all together. I just ground a slight taper onto the nut and drilled into here a little bit, which means the nut will fit into the washer a little bit, and that means this fits more tightly against here, so I don't have to cut away as much material. Now I still need a way of locking how far in and out this goes, and for that I'm going to cut a slot in here so that when this is bolted on here, that pinches the bolt so it can't turn. I'm cutting a 45-degree chamfer on one edge of the post for the upper blade guide. I'm using a T-slot jig bolt here, but you could just as well use a carriage bolt for this. And then the blade guide attaches on here using some washers. And this allows forward and back adjustment of the whole assembly. And this post needs to mount on here adjustable, but before I do that, I make the blade guides that go down here. I just cut these two pieces based on the templates in my plans, and now I have to cut these slots in here. And using the same procedure with a brad point drill bit to hog out the slots, like I did before. This part actually has a partial second layer, so I just have to glue that up. The thrust bearing needs to mount on here, and to mount that, I'll use the same method of a big washer, some smaller washers that just fit inside the bearing, and another bigger washer, and I'll just screw that onto here. Now I should have just screwed that straight into the wood, but I thought about that too late, so I drilled the hole bigger and I had to use a T-nut on the back. These parts go together like this, and I want the blade to track just a little bit left of center on here, so that if I wear a groove into this thing here, I can just flip it over. And that means the mounting holes for this part need to be right here. This is the finished lower blade guide. The blade goes through here and against the thrust bearing like this. And adjustability of the thrust bearing is like this, and the whole guide can also slide, and it'll be mounted using two bolts like this against part of the table. I haven't built the table yet, so I can't mount this yet. But I can mount the upper blade guide, and the first thing I need to do is to mark where the blade projects against the frame. Now, if I'm using a narrow blade, the front of the blade guide needs to be just ahead of the center, so it needs to go about this far back. And I've already marked that here. And on this blade guide, from where the blade goes to the left edge of the post is about 28 millimeters. So I need to go 28 millimeters left here for the cutout to fit this in here. This edge serves as a reference for the blade guide, but as you can see, it's not quite straight, nor is it entirely square, so I have to fix that. It'll be easier to make sure this is always on there straight if it just touches here and here, so I'll carve out the middle a little bit. Hello.
He's all of a sudden very bored.
So I think that now guides the post adequately, and it doesn't seem to want to wiggle very much. Right, Harriet? With this adequately tweaked, I now need to make a clamp that goes on here, which pushes it against this way and also back. I need to glue this part on here, but that doesn't leave very good clamping options. So I'm using the cutoff here, and I'll use a couple of C-clamps to hold it on here and give me a clamping surface. I'm using construction adhesive to glue the threaded rod in, but you could use wood glue too. It doesn't have to stick to the metal, all it has to do is lock it in. I'm just doing a fit check of this clamp before I glue this rabbited piece onto it. I got the clamp installed now, and I think I'd like a nice star knob to go on top of this coupler nut. And I'll cut that out on my new bandsaw. It looks like with the blade guides on, it works fine with a 1/4" blade. And that's good, because if you're building a bandsaw, you will need a bandsaw for cutting out the trunnions that make the table tilt. And that will be the subject of my next video.